My girlfriend left me for a better man her family proudly chose. Everyone smiled, everyone approved. I didn't argue. I disappeared. Months later, when she heard my name mentioned in a room she wasn't invited to, she froze before anyone even looked at her. I'm 35 now, financially independent, and I've learned that the most powerful response to rejection isn't anger or pleading. It's strategic silence, followed by undeniable success. I met Olivia when I was 30. She was 25. Came from old Southern money, the kind where family names open doors before you even knock in Nashville. I was working as a senior marketing director at a Fortune 500 company, making $85K, comfortable but nothing that would impress her social circle. We met at a gallery opening in Music Row through a mutual acquaintance. She approached me first, actually said she liked that I was looking at the art instead of working the room. The first 2 years were everything you'd want. She was intelligent, had her own opinions, seemed genuinely uninterested in her family's wealth. We'd spend Saturdays at farmers markets, hiking Percy Warner Park, dive bars with live music on Broadway. She never made me feel inadequate about my corporate salary or state school background. When I saw her laugh at my terrible jokes about marketing campaigns or get genuinely excited about a new band we'd discovered, I thought I'd found someone who valued substance over status. When I met her family around month 10, I knew I was being evaluated, but I thought I'd passed when her father, Charles Pemberton, shook my hand and said I seemed grounded. Turned out grounded was code for limited potential. Her family owned Southern Crown Hospitality across Tennessee and Kentucky. Her father had inherited hotel properties and expanded into entertainment venues throughout the region. Her mother, Victoria, came from similar wealth, spent her time on charity boards and country club committees. Her older brother Preston was being groomed to take over the family business, already involved in acquisition decisions and strategic planning. Then there was me, corporate employee with a decent salary, but no equity, no family business, no generational wealth to speak of. The first year they tolerated me with the kind of polite distance reserved for service staff at their events. Polite conversations at family dinners, perfunctory questions about my marketing campaigns, no outright hostility, just a cool evaluation that never warmed no matter how many times I showed up with flowers for Victoria, or asked Charles thoughtful questions about his business strategy. I tried to engage Preston about hospitality trends, researched industry topics before family gatherings, even offered to help with their digital marketing approach. Nothing registered as more than temporarily interesting. Around month 30, things shifted in a way that felt orchestrated. Her father started mentioning a family friend's son, Zachary, who'd gone to Vanderbilt with Preston, worked in private equity, came from a similar hospitality background. He'd recently moved back to Nashville after managing acquisitions in Atlanta for a boutique firm specializing in Southern properties. "You should reconnect with him," Charles would say at dinners, his tone casual but deliberate. "He's doing very well for himself. Just closed a $50 million hotel acquisition in Asheville. Understanding the family business from both sides, you know." Olivia would change the subject, visibly uncomfortable, but never directly challenging her father's obvious matchmaking. I'd pretend not to notice the subtext, but the message was clear. Here's someone who understands our world, our values, our expectations. Zachary started appearing at family events with increasing frequency. Always polite to me, never overtly competitive, but his presence was clearly orchestrated. Her parents would light up when he arrived. The conversation would shift to topics where he could shine, and I'd find myself relegated to observer status. Victoria would find reasons to seat him next to Olivia at dinners. Charles would engage him in lengthy conversations about markets, opportunities, and the future of Southern hospitality while I sat there with nothing to contribute beyond basic business knowledge. The contrast was subtle, but devastating. When Zachary talked about deal structures, Charles nodded with approval. When I mentioned successful marketing campaigns, the response was polite but dismissive. When Zachary shared insights about regional development trends, Preston leaned in with genuine interest. When I offered opinions about consumer behavior, the family would acknowledge them briefly before moving to more serious topics. One night, after a particularly painful family dinner, where I'd essentially been ignored for 3 hours, while Zachary held court about hospitality acquisition, trends, and regional market dynamics, I brought it up on the drive home. "They're pushing him on you pretty hard." "I know, it's embarrassing. I've told them to stop. Have you, though? Because it keeps happening, and it's getting more obvious. What do you want me to do? 'Cause a scene at family dinner? Stand up and announce that I'm dating someone they clearly don't approve of? I want you to set a boundary. Tell them you're with me and their matchmaking is disrespectful to both of us. I have told them that. They just don't listen. They think they know what's best for me. Then maybe you need to be louder about it. Or maybe you need to decide whether their opinion matters more than our relationship. She went quiet for the rest of the drive. That was the first time I realized she might not fight as hard for us as I would. That was also the first time I wondered if a part of her agreed with their assessment of me. Over the next 8 months, the pressure intensified in ways both subtle and obvious. Her family started making pointed comments about my career trajectory with the kind of concern that felt more like disappointment. Still at the same company, Ian? No interest in building something more permanent? Victoria would ask during cocktail hour, her tone suggesting that staying employed rather than creating wealth was somehow a character flaw. The questions became more invasive and pointed. They'd ask about my 5-year plan, my investment strategy, my thoughts on real estate development. Charles would mention successful entrepreneurs he knew, all coincidentally around my age, all building impressive companies or managing family enterprises. The subtext was clear. Here's what ambitious men your age accomplish when they have real vision. Preston would share stories about deals he was working on, acquisition opportunities, strategic partnerships, always with enough detail to highlight the scale of money involved. We're looking at a $15 million property in Memphis, he'd say casually over dinner. Zachary actually helped structure a similar deal in Atlanta last year. Smart approach to the financing. Then he'd glance at me, waiting for some contribution to a conversation I wasn't qualified to join. They weren't subtle about their audit of my life, and I was failing every test. No family business to inherit or build upon. No equity positions or investment portfolio worth mentioning. No network of wealthy contacts or insider knowledge of lucrative opportunities. Just a steady job with good benefits and a 401k that would maybe allow for comfortable retirement in 30 years if the market cooperated. Olivia started pulling away during this period, though she tried to hide it. Plans would get canceled more frequently, always with legitimate-sounding excuses. Work was busy, she was tired, family obligations came up unexpectedly. She'd take longer to respond to messages, and when we were together, she seemed distracted, like part of her attention was always elsewhere. I knew what was happening, but couldn't figure out how to stop it. The harder I tried to impress her family, the more inadequate I felt. I researched their business, tried to ask intelligent questions, offered suggestions about digital marketing strategies. Charles would nod politely and change the subject. Victoria would thank me for my interest and then immediately start talking to someone else. The worst part was watching Zachary navigate their world with effortless confidence. He didn't try to impress them because he didn't need to. He belonged in a way I never would. When he talked about market conditions, they listened because he was speaking their language. When he made observations about business trends, they valued his perspective because it came from someone who understood their reality. I started questioning everything about myself during those months. Was I being too sensitive? Were they right about my limited potential? Should I be more ambitious, more aggressive about building wealth? The doubt crept into every aspect of my life, affecting my work performance and sleep quality. Then, about 3 years into our relationship, Olivia asked if we could talk. It was a Thursday evening in late October. She came to my apartment instead of me going to hers, which should have been my first clue that this wasn't going to be a casual conversation. She sat on my couch, looking uncomfortable, fidgeting with the ring I'd given her for her birthday the year before. Not an engagement ring, just something meaningful I'd saved for months to buy. My parents want to have a serious conversation with me this weekend, about us, about my future. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Okay, what are you going to tell them? I don't know. They're going to push hard. They're going to make it about family loyalty and what's best for me long term. And what do you think is best for you? She didn't answer right away, just looked at her hands, twisting the ring around her finger. The silence stretched between us, heavy with implications I didn't want to acknowledge. I love you, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I also love my family, and they've made it clear that continuing with you means serious problems with them. What kind of problems? They've threatened to restructure things, cut me out of certain trusts, reduce my role in family decisions, basically make it clear that choosing you means choosing against everything I've ever known. The words hit me like a physical blow. So, they're blackmailing you. That's a harsh word. But it's accurate, isn't it? They're using money and family position to control your personal life. They think they're protecting me. They think you're not stable enough, that you don't have the foundation to build the kind of life they want for me. The kind of life they want, not the kind you want. I don't know what I want anymore, Ian. I'm exhausted. I've been fighting them for months, and it's not getting better. Every family event is a battle. Every conversation turns into some kind of judgment of you, of us, of my choices. I can't keep living like this. So you're giving up. I'm being realistic. I can't cut my family out of my life. They're everything I've ever known, my entire support system, my financial security. And maybe they have a point. Maybe we really aren't compatible long term. I should have argued, should have fought harder, made promises about our future, convinced her that love was worth the sacrifice. But in that moment, sitting in my modest apartment looking at this woman I'd built my future around, I just felt tired. Tired of being evaluated, tired of falling short, tired of needing to prove my worth to people who'd already decided I didn't measure up. If you're looking for permission to leave, I said quietly, you have it. I'm not going to beg you to choose me over your family. That's it? You're not going to fight for us? What's the point? You've already decided. You're just here to make it official, and maybe get me to make it easier for you. She started crying then, told me I was being cold, that she'd hoped I'd give her a reason to stand up to them, that she needed me to fight harder for what we had. I've been fighting, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger building in my chest. I've been showing up to every family dinner, being respectful to people who clearly don't respect me, trying to prove I'm worthy of their daughter. And none of it mattered. They decided I wasn't good enough 2 years ago, and nothing I do will change that. If you need their approval before you can commit to me, then we were never going to work anyway. She left that night, her tears feeling more like relief than genuine grief. 2 days later, she texted me that she'd talked to her family and decided to give Zachary a chance. The message was long, full of explanations about how it wasn't about choosing money over love, how it was about choosing a life where she didn't have to fight her family every day, how she hoped I'd understand. I didn't respond, just blocked her number, deleted our photos from my phone, and started planning my exit from the life I'd built around her. The first month after the breakup was purely mechanical. I went through the motions of my daily routine work, gym, sleep, while planning something bigger. I'd been thinking about starting my own digital marketing agency for months, specializing in B2B SaaS companies. The corporate world felt limiting, and the idea of building something entirely my own had been growing stronger. Now, I had nothing but time, motivation, and a burning need to prove that their assessment of my potential was fundamentally wrong. I gave my notice at the Fortune 500 company, despite my boss's attempts to counter-offer with a promotion. I cashed out my 401k early, accepting the penalties because I needed the capital. I liquidated some modest investments, cleaned out my savings account, and moved to a smaller apartment to cut expenses. Within 6 weeks of the breakup, I'd launched Apex Digital Strategies from my dining room table. The work was brutal in the best possible way. 18-hour days became normal. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. to work on client proposals before spending the day networking, making cold calls, and pitching services to anyone who would listen. Weekends were spent learning new software platforms, studying industry trends, and building case studies that could demonstrate value to potential clients. But it was exactly what I needed. No time to think about Olivia or what I'd lost. No mental space for self-doubt or regret. Just pure focus on building something that would prove everyone wrong, especially myself. Every rejection from a potential client became fuel for the next pitch. Every small win felt like vindication. 4 months in, I landed my first major client through sheer persistence and a bit of luck. A logistics software company was struggling with lead generation, burning through marketing budget without seeing meaningful results. Their previous agency had focused on vanity metrics instead of actual business outcomes. I spent 3 weeks analyzing their customer journey, identifying where prospects were dropping off, and developing a comprehensive automation strategy that would nurture leads more effectively. The initial contract was modest, but I threw everything I had at it. I spent 8 weeks practically embedded with their team, analyzing their systems, implementing new processes, A/B testing every element of their funnel. The improvements were measurable and significant, a 300% increase in qualified leads and a 40% reduction in customer acquisition cost within 2 months. They were thrilled. More importantly, they referred me to 2 other companies in their network, both dealing with similar challenges. Word started spreading in their industry about the consultant who actually delivered results instead of just reports and excuses. By month 9, I had 6 active clients and was hiring my first employee, a junior account manager who could handle the day-to-day communications, while I focused on strategy and new business development. By month 12, we were consistently profitable, and I was turning away work because we couldn't scale fast enough to meet demand. The growth was intoxicating, but it came with costs I hadn't anticipated. I was working constantly, living on takeout and coffee, seeing friends rarely if at all. My apartment became purely functional, a place to sleep and shower between work sessions. I lost 15 pounds without trying, not because I was eating healthy, but because I'd forget to eat until my body forced me to stop. One evening, while reviewing client reports at 11 p.m., one of my contractors mentioned hearing through Nashville's business community that Olivia had gotten engaged to Zachary. 6 months after leaving me, she was planning a wedding that would undoubtedly be featured in the society pages. I expected to feel something: pain, anger, vindication, something. Instead, I just felt empty. I nodded, made some neutral comment, and went back to reviewing conversion data. The next morning, I couldn't even remember exactly how I'd learned the news. It felt like information about a stranger's life. About 14 months after the breakup, everything changed again. We got approached by a regional private equity firm that specialized in digital marketing agencies. They'd been tracking our growth, impressed by our client retention rates and revenue progression. They wanted to discuss investment opportunities. The initial meeting was surreal. Sitting in their downtown Nashville conference room, looking out at the city where I'd felt so inadequate just over a year earlier, presenting our business model to people who saw real value in what I'd built. They asked detailed questions about our processes, our competitive advantages, our plans for expansion. For the first time in my adult life, I was being evaluated based on my actual accomplishments rather than my potential or my connections. They made an offer that would mean serious money, not generational wealth, but enough to change my life completely. My business partner wanted to accept immediately, but I wanted to negotiate better terms. We compromised on a structure that gave them 30% equity while maintaining our operational control, plus enough liquidity for me to never worry about money again. The deal closed exactly 18 months after Olivia had walked out of my apartment. My parents cried when I called to tell them the numbers. My father, who'd worked in manufacturing management his entire career, just kept shaking his head and saying he was proud of me. "I always knew you had it in you," he said, though I could tell he was as surprised as anyone by the scale of what I'd accomplished. I bought a house in Belle Meade, nothing ostentatious but undeniably nice. Good neighborhood, space for a proper home office, garage for the Tesla I'd always wanted but never thought I could afford. I wasn't showing off, just finally living comfortably without the constant stress of financial uncertainty that had defined most of my adult life. Around month 20, I got invited to speak at a digital marketing conference downtown. Someone had written a case study about our work with that first logistics client, and the conference organizers wanted me on a panel about B2B automation strategies. I almost declined, knowing it would mean returning to Nashville, where memories of Olivia and her family still lingered, but my business partner convinced me it was excellent exposure for the firm. The panel went better than expected. I found myself enjoying the discussion, sharing insights that came from real experience rather than theoretical knowledge. Afterwards, several people approached me with questions, business cards, potential opportunities. I was in the middle of a conversation with a potential client when someone called my name. It was an old acquaintance, someone I'd met through Olivia during our relationship. He'd been friendly enough back then, but had clearly sided with her after our split, never reaching out or acknowledging me when we'd crossed paths occasionally around the city. "Ian, I didn't know you'd be speaking here. How are you? What are you doing now?" I gave him the brief version of my story, the agency, the growth trajectory, the PE investment. His expression changed as I talked, shifting from casual interest to genuine surprise to something that looked like respect. "That's incredible. I had no idea you were doing so well. Last I heard, he trailed off, realizing that finishing that sentence would be awkward. Not something I've been advertising, I said simply. Are you around tonight? There's a reception at the Hermitage. You should come network with some people. The reception was exactly what I'd expected. Industry professionals mixed with local business leaders. The kind of event where deals get discussed over expensive whiskey and business cards change hands like currency. I worked the room efficiently, had productive conversations, collected contacts that would likely turn into opportunities. Then I saw them across the room. Charles, Preston, some people from their social circle, all dressed in expensive clothes, holding drinks, talking and laughing with the easy confidence of people who'd never doubted their place in the world. They hadn't seen me yet. I watched Charles talking to someone, displaying that same dismissive confidence he'd always had when discussing business or evaluating people, the absolute certainty that his judgment was correct, his values supreme, his assessment of everyone around him accurate and final. I could have approached them, could have made small talk, let them discover what I'd accomplished, enjoyed their surprise. Instead, I turned away and left through a side exit. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 10 minutes, just breathing and processing the realization that I felt absolutely nothing toward them. No anger, no need for validation, no desire for revenge, just complete indifference. I flew home the next morning thinking that would be the end of my Nashville chapter, but business has a way of bringing you back to places you'd rather avoid. A week later, my partner forwarded me an email. Someone from the reception had recommended us for a major project. A regional hospitality consulting consortium needed a complete digital transformation, 7-figure budget, the kind of client that makes a firm's reputation. "This is huge," my partner said, "but it's based in Nashville. You okay with that?" I thought about it, considered the possibility of running into Olivia or her family, the potential awkwardness, all the old wounds that might reopen. Then I thought about the opportunity, the challenge, the validation of being chosen for something this significant. I'm okay with it. Let's pursue it. We won the contract after a competitive presentation process. Over the next year, I spent significant time in Nashville, building relationships with local business leaders, establishing our firm's presence in the market. I heard through the network that Olivia's marriage was struggling, that she'd been asking mutual acquaintances about me, trying to understand what I was doing and how I was doing. The final confrontation came at a business lunch event 8 months later. I walked in, scanned the room, and there she was. She looked different, thinner, tired, wearing expensive clothes like armor rather than adornment. Our eyes met across the room, and I watched her face go pale with recognition. But instead of the complex emotions I might have expected, I felt nothing. She was just another person at a networking event, someone from my past with no connection to my present or future. Later that same evening, I encountered Charles at another industry gathering. He approached me after hearing my presentation, his expression carefully controlled. "Impressive work, Ian. Very impressive. I may have misjudged your potential." I looked at him steadily. This man who'd dismissed me, who'd orchestrated my replacement, who'd pressured his daughter into choosing family approval over personal happiness. "I appreciate you saying that, Charles, but your judgment doesn't define me. It never did." His expression tightened slightly. He nodded once and walked away. I watched him go and felt absolutely nothing. No vindication, no anger, no need for his approval, just complete indifference. That's when I knew I'd truly moved on. Not when I stopped thinking about Olivia, not when I achieved financial success, but when the people who had dismissed me became irrelevant to my sense of self-worth. I'm seeing someone now. Natalie Brooks, a CFO I met through work. She's smart, independent, built her career through competence rather than connections. We've been together for 8 months, and it's easy in a way my relationship with Olivia never was. No performance, no evaluation, no need to prove my worth. Just two people who respect each other's ambition and enjoy building something together. Olivia chose security and approval. I chose dignity and autonomy. We both live with those choices. The difference is, I'd make mine again without hesitation. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Thanks for watching.